Hello, welcome to SCLC Today. We have another great program for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been watching about the economic status within our country. You know, how people who have previously retired from working and they have to go back because of the escalation of rent, mortgages, food, groceries, automobiles, just to be able to stay afloat in today's society. Many of people are not retiring. Something has to give. We can't have a war between the haves and the have-nots. You might be in the middle, but it has nothing to do with class. People are suffering in our society. Let me just bring about a positive note. Former President Jimmy Carter, who's in hospice care at his home in Plains, Georgia. Here in Georgia, where we are in Atlanta, Georgia. What a great career the former president has had. Done great work after being President of the United States of America. I mean, this should serve as an example for many of us, where at 98 years of age, he worked until he couldn't work anymore. He didn't go home and sit down. Did a lot of work as president. And also, after he went back to Plains, Georgia, and he wasn't president of the United States anymore. Many people would say, oh, I'm going back to the ranch. I'm going back to the farm. I remember my wife and I going to Libreville, Gabon, Africa. And former President Jimmy Carter was on the plane. It was headed to Paris. President Carter got out of first class, went all over the plane, shaking people's hands, asking them, where are you going? Why are you going? And my wife and I said, we're going to Libreville, Gabon to stay, I think it was 10 days, because I had been there 30 days prior to. Got very excited about going to the motherland. I told my wife she had to come on this cloud that I'm on in order for us to continue to elevate ourselves. And we went back to Libreville, Gabon. But President Jimmy Carter was on that plane. And I never will forget how motivated we all were. But I can speak for myself. I was so touched that he, in the position, the status of being a former president of the United States of America, would take time to go over and shake hands with everyone, 99, 100% of the people he didn't know. That was so impressionable to me. And I guarantee you it's about 300 people on that plane. And he shook everyone's hand, even shook the baby's hand. This was an example that's embedded in me for the rest of my life. So continue to pray for President Jimmy Carter and his family. And I just want to say we need more leadership like he has exemplified all of his life in public. You know, we all make mistakes, but in his public life, I never will forget our good friend of SCLC and board member, the late Miss Dr. Rita Samuel, who has made her transition, and she worked for President Jimmy Carter as governor and as president, and all of the good things that she had to say about him. And every year, Women Month, she would have a program at the Carter Center. The impact that President Jimmy Carter has made upon many people. I'm closing in saying, what kind of impact are we making upon others? Building homes, cutting grass, go in the store for someone, just holding the door at the store and say, come on in, let me serve you. I'm going to the same store you're going, but I got to the door first and I'm going to hold it for you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what love is all about. Love is giving, the gift of giving. You forgive and you give. That's love, because love is what love does. I want to talk about Selma. 58 years of the 1965 Voter Rights Act, because it happened in Marion, Alabama. Many people don't talk about that. That's why I'm so glad we have this opportunity in this program to express and talk about Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was killed by an Alabama state trooper in a local cafe when the state troopers and local law enforcement officers pursued the marchers and was beating them with billy clubs. And Jimmy Lee Jackson, after he got in the cafe, the troopers continuously pursued not only him, but his sister, his grandfather was also being pursued. And when the trooper attempted to hit his grandfather in the head, he blocked it, and the trooper shot and killed him. 3 or 4 days later, Jimmy Lee Jackson died. That was Marion, Alabama. That didn't happen in Selma, just 20 miles or so away from Selma. But the intention was to march from Selma, and it was suggested that we take the body of Jimmy Lee Jackson to the foot of the state capitol and let Governor George Wallace see the end results of the brutality of his state troopers. The body did not go to the state capitol, but guess what? The people did. And that particular movement started out with none other than Reverend Jose Williams. Then Dr. King came in. Reverend James Orange was also put in jail at night in Marion, Alabama. And they cut the lights off because they were having a night march. And he was supposed to have been killed, murdered, assassinated that night. But God spared Reverend James Orange. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we continuously go back to reenact that particular 58 years of history. Selma to Montgomery March. And Jimmy Lee Jackson's name should never be forgotten. Because of his death and others, I'm just saying Jimmy Lee Jackson right now, in that same movement of Selma, there were others killed, but I don't have enough time to go into that. But it was elevated and impacted upon the state troopers killing none other than Mr. Jimmy Lee Jackson, who had recently gotten out of the military and come home to be killed because he was defending his grandfather, grandparents, mother, sister, his loved ones. He was defending them, and he was shot down. That was 58 years ago. And every year, SCLC leads that march with the jubilee and the jubilation of success. We'll talk about the other aspect of Section 4, Section 5 being gutted. We have no more protection from the federal government. You're going back to state rights. You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? We're going back to Jim Crow. That means we have to do it again. We have no protection from the federal government. Federal government, my grandmama and people in the community and mom and dad and everybody used to say, federal government was our friend, but the state wasn't. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. with another program to give you the facts, because love is what love does, and we love you.